Hey guys, I'm here to get into The King of Comedy, directed by Martin Scorsese, released in the year 1982. This is just a very underrated and uniquely disturbing kind of film altogether, where it just really feels like Robert De Niro's character, Rupert Pupkin, is on a comfortable amount of rotten, because he's basically one of those guys who's just desperately out to feel a moment of glory, a moment of stardom, which is what I think like he wanted to be a big. He wants to feel like a bit like he's like a lame. Like he feels like he's basically like the way he acts in his actions. I mean, this guy feels very lame, but it feels like he wants to be this big timer. So he's just going through all these really uncomfortable situations to get that moment of glory, basically. And that's kind of what this whole film was taking me through in a way that's paced quite similar to Taxi Driver. But I think this is an original kind of film that Martin Scorsese makes, and a very different kind of outlook on the similar kind of subject matter, where it's just like an almost dreamlike, transcendental kind of outlook on a really insane man. How insane this guy is to get a moment of fame, and just how ugly the whole situation is as it plays out with Jerry Langford. It's almost just like you're witnessing the good guy in ultimate hell and bad guys getting to have a great time. Basically, is sort of what this whole film is, and it feels like it's being a little playful. Honestly, this film it feels as serious in tone as Taxi Driver in a strange kind of way. Like it's just a little bit more. I think loose in a way. And I mean, and I love the story since I saw it when I was about 15 years old. This has always kind of come back to me as like, sometimes it gets me challenged because I think it hits too close to home. Like sometimes I want to knock it down, but I'm like, oh, this is perfect. It's easy to, just see both sides of the coin where like, you could be the, like you can see like, Jerry Langford's like clearly a genius, but then, Rupert Pumpkin's just kind of, like getting it all basically. But he really is like a rotten man, it turns out. So that's kind of what the aesthetic of this whole film kind of feels like. That challenges a lot. It's a uniquely abrasive kind of tone this film has. But it really is just a masterpiece of honing in on obsession to just be famous for at all costs, basically. And yeah, it's a really abrasive film. I mean, that's the thing. Like Rupert Pupkin, it's like Martin Scorsese just keeps making characters who are just more and more vile. It seems like with all of this, almost in his progression. That's what I'm noticing about his progression. There's just the level of vile is kind of just more and more. But here he does hone in, I think, for on his first time. And this is very similar to the arc I'm kind of currently starting on, which is I think it's important to have a certain sense of humor as a director. And I think that for me, at least I'm seeing it. And Martin Scorsese got to that, I think, after Raging Bull. He makes it very, because those films are frighteningly serious. But I think like here moving forward, Martin Scorsese has a dark comedy outlook. And that started here with this film. And it's just like, I mean, everything about this is just like, man, a completely annoying person getting away with a lot of bad things. That's kind of what this whole film is. And it's maybe one of the deepest layered character studies on that. This guy who is just an asshole. There's something really disturbing about his obsession with just celebrity culture to a point where he's gonna just do anything just to be famous in this way. But again, it's also thought provoking. It makes it, I think the way it makes you look at yourself is just like, well, there is that desire to be that famous, in everybody. I think in a certain kind of way, they're to be understood. It's like your life's work having value and going towards somewhere. You look at like this film just portrays it more like he's like an aspiring comedian, and he's completely obsessive the entire way through. There's a really uncomfortable undertone to this entire film. Sandra Bernhard is just insane in this film, and I feel like complete madness in her character. That's what kind of comes out of all this. She can be arguably one of the most challenging characters because he's really like it's like the film Casino. Martin Scorsese was definitely bringing out some very unlikable characters. These two kind of characters, particularly. But this is just one of the, I think, most fascinating films of just kind of capturing a strangest of spiritual downfalls for a person together, because this guy's just completely phony. As it goes on more, it's like, this guy's awful, rotten bastard. And it's like almost, it's just really entertaining going through all this madness as it unfolds, because it feels like hilarious, but it is completely mad. That's sort of like the way it all kind of comes across. It's not really like anything else. I feel like the film that reminds me the most in tone aesthetically is actually Network by Sidney Lumet. This is just kind of a film about just, again, it's like this desperation for a celebrity status of some sort. And another film that kind of makes me think of like Dog Day Afternoon, where it's just like a minimalist kind of setting, just evil bastards getting away with some awful things, basically, but it's told masterfully. Very uniquely, just colorful aesthetically. And I really love this film. it's so mystifying what lives in this film. Maybe what makes River Pupkin maybe even more disturbing in a strange way than Travis Bickle in the end for me is that it's like it's almost a little bit more war because I think when I watch it, it does feel a little more everyman in a way. Like also, although like it's kind of just lame because you're looking at the worst moments of this guy basically just dying to go for it, and it's just like yeah, makes you look at like yourselves that my actions as a director. It's like I guess I'm kind of wanting to go for it in that way too. In the end of the day, which is crazy, but there's Jerry Langford. Jerry Lewis is the real deal here. The man doesn't smile once this entire film. He's the most serious man in the entire film because that's what's so interesting. I think that Jerry Lewis and a lot of comedians were kind of onto this idea of comedians are maybe the most serious people, but then the most serious people are kind of the most hilarious. Like I know a lot of film directors are kind of goofballs. I'm kind of related to that. I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm a goofball. Yeah. So I mean, there's a chemistry that there is there. I mean, yeah, this is just the perfect Martin Scorsese film. This is who I've kind of just realized at this point in time. I think he does have technically the greatest filmography, most impressive filmography of all time to me right now. I mean, I know Paul Thomas Anderson ultimately is probably going to win out, and he is probably my favorite director still. But Martin Scorsese is just right now blowing me away so much. Just how he's done everything, and I'm very inspired by Martin Scorsese's will to always work with other writers as opposed to write his own films, because that's something that is I've learned after making my first feature film that it is a lot of ego that goes in it. So now I kind of realize I kind of want to stick with the passion and the ideas and themes, and then maybe let a superior writer do it. Maybe this was a good teaching why, because what too much ego can look like. It can look like this picture, it's just where it feels so everyman, but it's like when you just rewatch it, it's like, golly, this is just a fake hot, a very messy. This is like a certain kind of hell to live in, and it's that living in that intense level of desperation for a moment of glory. And this was 100 times richer and deeper, and just portraying everything about itself. I mean, Robert De Niro is just so disturbing in this. I mean, River Pupkin is just, he's just basically crazy. This is absolutely crazy, and it's a really dark comedy. Definitely one of my favorite depictions of insanity and just insanity, pure raw insanity. That's the king of comedy, and it's rated PG, I believe, actually. So I recommend this one to anyone who's interested in a very rotten exploration. This is definitely dark. It feels very dark. I don't know. It could be rated for all I know, because I haven't checked in a while with this film, but certainly feels very dark. But it's just such a seedy situation. Although you don't really see anything the subject matter isn't really too bad. It's just the way it feels. It's just, golly, it's a unique amount of unsettling. That's what I realize Martin Scorsese can do. He can make you uncomfortable like no other man on the planet when he wants to. It feels like, because that's the thing I also noticed too. Whenever I mention Martin Scorsese, he's like my top favorite directors. Which right now he's my number one basically right now after getting Kills of the Flower Moon. Because I think that he is the genius, kind of just doing a wide variety. And I think that I noticed too, whenever I mention all this, it's just like, there is something very intimidating about a Martin Scorsese film, it turns out. And it's like, I think I feel separated from that a lot. And I think whenever I can just see what people mean, this film is a kind of a good portrayal maybe of what that they're talking about. It's like this guy who feels like a total loser all the time. So he basically is just living his entire life just to feel like an excessive amount of attention on him for an extended period of time. So I think that there's a haunting core to that, and it certainly communicates to the bone in a very unique kind of way. But I love this film. This is a masterpiece. I highly recommend checking this out.